Sometimes I've been sharing a devotional to begin my sermon time, and I'm really going to try very, very hard to have worship be 45 minutes so that it's not a longer time period, again, just for safety. So I'm going to really try hard about that. What does it mean when the pastor looks at their watch? Absolutely nothing, right? Right. So, but I really am going to try hard to adhere to that. But anyway, I've been starting sometimes with reading a weekly devotional that Reverend Dan Bush has been sending out. And he's been working, mainly from the gospel lesson in the lectionary. And I have been doing that relatively recently, these last couple weeks at least. So I wanted to share it with you again this morning. Again, it's just very brief, but I hope that you find it as meaningful as I did. Room at the table. There were just 3 persons in my immediate family, mother, father, and myself. My mother's family included 3 sisters and 2 brothers. As the oldest, my mother became the mother to the others when their mother died when she was 15, and the youngest was not quite 2. She was the matriarch from that point on, and when Lydia announced a family gathering, all were present, except one brother's family because he was a Navy career person in California. The family grew with the addition of 5 in-laws, so 10 parents, and soon there were 10 cousins. There was always room at the table to expand the family. When we got together, babies were next to their parents, and the other cousins were at a separate table. Even though at a separate table, there are fond memories of the talk, chatter, gossip, remembrances, and scrumptious food. Minus the Navy family, finally there were 17 of us who joined the family gatherings. Eventually, as the cousins got older, we were all at one table. And again, I hope that maybe some of this is bringing some good remembrances back for you of Thanksgivings past, of large family gatherings, which I'm assuming at least none of us have been able to have. So maybe it's a little bittersweet to hear about these remembrances around table, but we will get there again. On October 4th, this is continuing Pastor Dan's devotional. On October 4th, 2020, many Christian churches around the world will be celebrating World Communion Sunday, which we have always done since I've been here at least. The Reverend Dr. Hugh Thompson Kerr, as moderator of the General Assembly of the U.S. Presbyterian Church, proposed World Communion Sunday as a celebration on the first Sunday of every October to promote Christian unity and ecumenical cooperation. In 1940, the predecessor of the now National Council of Churches began promoting it to Christian churches worldwide. The intent of this celebration was to bring together the Church of Jesus Christ and to be interconnected as the body of Christ, for there was room at the table for all. World Communion Sunday is like my family gathering with people at tables next to each other, sharing one common meal. Adults and children had separate agendas, but we were family, aware of the differences of age and expanding families within the family, for there was room at the table. The church throughout the world is very diverse, yet we gather as invited families together, sharing a holy and earthly meal, sitting together at Christ's table. Christ as host willingly gives himself totally to us, for us, and in us. It is a sacred meal and also a meal of fellowship that has been done and shared before and becomes ever so new whenever we gather or will gather together in the breaking of the bread and drinking of the cup. The meal nourishes us physically as well as spiritually. There is room at the table for all of God's children. So I love that, and it kind of gave the background again of World Communion Sunday, which I try to do every World Communion Sunday. So thanks to Pastor Dan for sending that out to the ministers to share if we feel called to do that. So thinking about, is there room at the table, and what does that table look like? And it's the table of mankind, right, of humankind. And it's the table of all people everywhere. I had written down some other table manners things. Don't slurp your soup, right? Is that one? Wait till everybody's seated. Say grace before you eat. Maybe some of us lived off of that, or grew up with that. How about eat all your vegetables? And how about clean your plate? Clean your plate. That was one at our family. You can kind of tell. And isn't it interesting how some of those things we grow up with, some of them are really great, wonderful things, and then other things maybe like, maybe that wasn't such a good thing, and maybe I won't have my kids necessarily do that. So that's how we learn and grow, right? We make those decisions. What does the family, or what does the table look like? And do I feel like this is what I want? Maybe you had a table that was very segregated. Think for a second, just really quickly, about your Thanksgiving table. So close your eyes if you want, or not, and think about your Thanksgiving table right now. You're maybe growing up, or maybe the last Thanksgiving, or Christmas, when you get together that way, maybe growing up. And think about what that table looked like. Was it a table, and again, I don't need to sound judgmental. Was it a table that was just family? Was it just certain members of the family that were invited? And maybe that was just because of logistics, I don't know. Or maybe there were other people there. My dad used to invite some people from work when we were growing up, that he would just invite somebody from work that didn't have family around, because he worked at Brush Wellman and they had people traveling in a lot. And so somebody could just show up at the table. Again, if it's family, maybe our ethnicity was all one, right? Our skin color was all one. Maybe not. Maybe it's very, very diverse around our table. Was your table round or rectangular? Whenever I think of the heavenly banquet, I always think of a round table. I don't know what you think about that. But think, if it was rectangular, who was at the front? Okay, right. Usually it was the man of the family. Okay, and again, if that's what the tradition was and that everybody was comfortable with that, that's great. I know from our table, my mom was always on this end, but it wasn't because she was in a respected, revered position. Why was she sitting at the very end in the corner? Closest to the kitchen. Closest to the kitchen, okay? And again, in my house, it happened to be my mother. Maybe in your family, your father could. But again, just trying to kind of pay attention to all of that, of is everybody in a respected place? Is everybody given a place of honor? And again, you almost can think again about that image of a round table, like King Arthur's round table. Ben would be so happy that I mentioned King Arthur, because he loves King Arthur, with that whole idea that there is no head of the table. Except for, in our case, we would believe Christ would be at the head, obviously. But otherwise, it would not be. So thinking about all the different table manners, if you will, I just wanted to read a little bit. I was going to read more of this, but because I just love it. I don't know if you would love it or not, or find meaning in it. But I'm not sure I've ever shared this. But years ago, I ran across this on a Garrison Keillor Prairie Home Companion show. But this is an essay that was written by Ian Fraser. I don't know what else he's written. It was published in the Atlantic in 1997. So if some of you like this, I'd be happy to email this to you. But I just wanted to just share. So it's called Lamentations of the Father. And just talking again about different rules of eating. And again, we looked at that a couple weeks ago too in our scriptures readings, right? Of all the different rules that were in place before of, oh, this makes you unclean. This is, and all of the legalism. And then Jesus kind of came along and said, hang on a second, hang on. This is not what's important. What's important is here, right? So just wanted to read part of this to you. Of the beasts of the field and the fishes of the sea, and on all foods that are acceptable in my sight, you may eat, but not in the living room. Of the hoofed animal, boiled or ground into burgers, you may eat, but not in the living room. Of the cereal grains, of the corn and of the wheat and of the oats and of the cereals that are of bright color and unknown provenance, you may eat, but not in the living room. It says, I'm just going to skip a little bit. When you chew your food, keep your mouth closed until you have swallowed, and do not open it to show your brother or sister what is within. I say to you, do not do so, even if your brother or sister has done the same to you. Eat your food only. Do not eat that which is not food. Neither seize the table between your jaws, nor use the raiment of the table to wipe your lips. I say again to you, do not touch it, but leave it as it is. And though your stick of carrot does indeed resemble a marker, draw not with it upon the table, even in pretend, for we do not do that. That is why. And though the pieces of broccoli are very like small trees, do not stand them upright to make a forest. Because we do not do that, that is why. Sit just as I have told you, and do not lean to one side or the other, nor slide down until you are nearly slid away. Heed me, for if you sit like that, your hair will go into the syrup. And now behold, even as I have said it, it has come to pass. So there's 2 pages. I wasn't going to read all of it anyway, but it's such a fun little thing. Again, kind of trying to think of the book of Lamentations, right, and all of that biblical imagery. But I love that because again, it just kind of makes us think again about that whole table image and having children around that table as a very important part of that table. Even if they are in a separate table. How many of you had a kids' table at like a Thanksgiving, like Pastor Dan had said? Yeah, we did too. And we had the coolest, Mark, do you remember these? The coolest little small salt and pepper shakers. Do you remember those? Yeah. It was worth sitting over at the kids' table, although we're 6 years apart, so he got to the adult table much faster than I did. Poor Jeff and I were stuck at the kids' table forever. But there were these tiny little salt shakers that we used, and it was just the coolest thing. And so, again, we were just still, even though we were separated, we were still part of the discussion. We had different conversations going on at the kids' table, but at the same time, we were all eating the same food, enjoying that same moment together. I was thinking as some of you were mentioning some of the different rules that you maybe found as a child as you were eating food at the table, that there are different rules around the country. And I know many of you know that. Some of you probably, like Mark has said, when he would be over in the Navy and he'd have some diplomatic function or something to go to, that he would have to do all these classes. Like one thing we said, don't eat with your hands, right? Like that's rude, right? Well, did you know that in Ethiopia, they have a tradition of hand feeding each other? It's called gursha, and it's a gesture of hospitality that builds trust and social bonds between those people sharing food. So if you start eating with your hands, make sure you feed it to somebody else, right? That'd be worse, right? Wouldn't it? Here, in Greek households, guests are often offered second and third helpings insistently. Go ahead and take more. There's a compliment to your host, so that's a good thing. But in Chile, it's offensive to take seconds unless it's being offered to you. Slurping your soup, we said, right? Well, in Japan and China, slurping your noodles show appreciation for the meal. And the host takes the noise as a great compliment. So kids that are here, young people, next time you're slurping, just say, "This was excellent, Mom. That's why I'm doing it." Did you know that finishing your plate is a no-no in many Asian countries? It suggests that your host didn't feed you enough, and they'll keep refilling your plate until they run out, and they'll be upset they didn't have enough food for you. So leaving a small amount on your plate symbolizes that you've had your fill and acknowledges their hospitality. That's one I didn't know. And the same thing with tipping your waiter. Did you guys know this? At a restaurant, it's an insult in Japan, apparently. I got these online. It's implying that he's not making enough money and is thus treating him menially if you leave a tip for somebody in Japan. So isn't it interesting how that everybody has different ways of doing things, right? Even within your own families, right? You might have one family, speaking of family gatherings, at my family for Christmas, we sit around and everybody gets their presents distributed, and then we literally go around youngest to oldest, one present at a time while everybody looks at them, and it takes hours and hours, and we absolutely love it. Mark's family, and again, I'm not judging, it was just very hard for me, different. Mark's family, everybody sort of gets their presents, and kind of halfway distributing them, everybody was just ripping things open. And I couldn't see, well, I wanted to see I couldn't. So for me, it was very difficult. We tried doing it my way last Christmas at the Jacksons, and they were super nice about it. But they were just like, so we've got to wait, right? Okay, and we're supposed to be looking at you opening your presents, okay? I mean, they were super wonderful, but it was just something totally different. So we all have different customs, even within our families, we all have different customs. But again, that's something that we can celebrate, that diversity. And we certainly have that with our brothers and sisters around the world. And you'll hear that in the communion liturgy, which we'll begin here in just a minute, but how that everybody does something different. But it doesn't matter because we have one thing that unites us, just like we can be American Baptist and UCC and nobody cares. Because what unites us is the important thing of Jesus Christ as head of our household. But we have to remember that we are being hospitable to the world, that we're sharing. I just want to bring up a couple statistics, and you probably already know these. The United States has 5% of the world's population, but consumes 24% of the world's energy. The United States has 5% of the world's population and has about 40% of its weapons. The United States has 5% of the population, but produces 40% of the world's waste. And in America, daily, about 200,000 tons, not pounds, tons of edible food is thrown away daily. Now, again, I understand there are different ways of looking at some of these different figures. I understand that there are other countries that could say, but I just wanted to throw this in today as an awareness that every country, but 5% of the population and 40% of the world's waste, some of these figures just don't make sense and are not fair to the other brothers and sisters around the world. So I think it's so important that we look at those different things, that we look at all the different ways that we are being hospitable, but that we're also helping. Absolutely. Look at how much the United States has done in moving forward in technology and in so many other different ways. To just think about what it means for all of us to be sitting at that table, that we're all sharing equally, that everyone has clean water to drink, that everyone has food to eat at that table, that everybody has access to health care, that everybody is free of bias at that table, of racial bias, that we're all people and we're all here together. Oh, you have this color skin? Oh, you believe that? Oh, you're from this country? And that we all can join together at the head, under the head of the table of Jesus Christ and live the way he wants us to live, which I believe is to create a more just and generous world. And again, for all of us, there's probably different ways that we would go about that. And that's okay, because again, that's the beauty of diversity, that we can all bring forth our ideas and hopefully, Mary Ellen, as you said, in a way that we can sit and listen to each other respectfully, to talk, to let other people say give their opinion, how important that is. And I think it all comes down to one thing, of living not out of fear, living not out of scarcity, a mental attitude of scarcity, but living out of an attitude of abundance. That I have been blessed, and that I need to do something about that to other Americans who don't have that blessing and don't have those opportunities, to people around the country or to people around the world. To live out of a spirit of grace and thankfulness, gratitude and abundance. That makes all the difference.